Welcome to today's video. We got a bunch of stuff going on. We're back from Ireland. The shop's overloaded as usual, and we're gonna talk about some stuff. So come on. So we haven't done a standalone video on this yet. This is the Endurance CRZ. We're building this for our customer Ray. This actually used to be my street car. It had a 2-liter in it, K20 swapped, but it is a K24 now. So we've switched it to a K24, added a few extra sensors and things like that are relevant to endurance racing. If you're not familiar with what endurance racing is, it's just racing for a very long time. Most of the races that this car is going to do are like 9 hours or more, like between 9 and 14 hours, multiple drivers, lots of driver changes, fueling, etc. So I thought it'd be cool to walk through this car. I absolutely love CRZs when they're K-swapped. I feel like they didn't get the love that they deserved from the aftermarket, mainly because they were hybrids originally, but when I look at a car, I look at its value as a shell. I don't really care about what its original setup was to a certain degree. So the best thing you can do for these things, pull the electric motors out, pull the hybrid drive out, put a K-Series in them. They're sick. I mean, it's absolutely a modern CRX, which I actually started on CRXs when I was 14. So my first car, my first fun car, or my first project car was a 91 CRX, and I hadn't felt that vibe, so to speak, when driving one of these cars, or driving any modern car rather, like this thing, compared to, it really brought me back to my old CRX days, which was awesome. So we're prepping this car out with a bunch of cool goodies, and I'm going to walk you through a bunch of that stuff right now. So first and foremost, Haltech, baby, always. This is Haltech's new S-Series ECU. It uses the same case as the R3s, but it does not have the posts that make the ECU a power distribution module as well. So this is actually, they just came out. This is sort of replacing the Elite Series. The Elite Series will continue to be made and supported, but there's a lot of cool little niche features about these ECUs that actually make a lot of good sense, and I'm glad that they did this. I'm actually going to talk to you a little bit about why I like this versus the Elite. So first of all, let's start by looking at the difference in size. Although the S2, and this is a Nexus S2 by the way, versus an Elite 1500. So for a 4-cylinder car, up until this was created, this would have been our general go-to. So Elite 1500s, great for a 4-cylinder, especially with drive-by-wire. There are 2 CAN networks, relatively simple setup. You have an onboard map, you have your 2 connectors, and then you have your second CAN network, and this is how you plug in via USB. So pretty cool, but a little bit thicker than the S2. So where the S2 for me really comes into play is when you have an ECU that's shoved under the dash, in between some other accessories or something, and it's sort of pushed in like a cassette, and you need something that's relatively thin form factor in order to get in there, and now that it's stuffed in between 2 things, you don't really want to be, or you really can't use anything that's on the face, because it would essentially be inside of an enclosed area. So it makes it very difficult to use these with the USB coming this way. And there's really no other way to program these ECUs with the exception of the USB coming off the face. So no matter what, you have to have access for the plugs on this side, and you have to have access on this side for not only your second CAN network, but also to program them through USB. Now they have a cover, but I guess you could do the programming with it out on the floor and then shove it back in, and if you needed to tune it again, you pull it back out. But it proves to be relatively inconvenient. Specifically, we use these on the S2000s, and we have a mount that puts them up underneath the kick panel, and I actually have to I buy a custom made USB-B 90-degree right angle in order to have the wire there all the time, and then I run it to a secondary plug-in on the dash. It's just another step, and it's a little bit annoying, but I mean, these things have been out for, you know, close to 10 years. They've been fantastic. They work with drive-by-wire. They do not have onboard wideband. So you need a Lambda controller, a wideband controller external to this, which is a little bit frustrating. It is convenient in terms of, okay, if I don't have space and I need to mount it somewhere else, that's cool. You can add it on later, but it's almost $400. So you have an Elite 1500, which is like $1,700, plus a $400, or roughly like $385 CAN Lambda that you need to buy as well. The Nexus S2 now has onboard Lambda, so I don't need to have an external controller. The wideband gets wired in directly into the ECU, and it's actually cheaper that way. So the S2, if you buy them right now, I don't know how the pricing is going to go in the future or whatever, but right now, in the end of 2024, you can buy an S2, which has onboard Lambda, for $75 cheaper than you can buy the Elite 1500 plus an external Lambda. So that right there, it's a no-brainer, number one. Number two, everything comes out of this side. So all of your connectors, your connections, your USB-C programming, your map sensor, your onboard map, all comes out of one end. So this could go underneath the dash where only this side is exposed. You have your programming cable, you have your map sensor, you have your connectors, number one. Number two is this has wireless communication. So I can program this wirelessly, I can data log off it wirelessly, and it works with a wireless app on my phone. Now, this didn't originally start as a Haltech plug. I'm in no way affiliated with Haltech unless they want to give me some stuff, which would be fantastic. But I've been using their stuff for years, and these are just sick, and I just want to talk about why they're sick. So, yeah, they're wireless connectivity to a phone app, so you can actually make adjustments and things like that through your phone. But the nice part is say, for instance, it goes underneath the dash like a, I mean, what's a good example? GD Subaru, you know, or a Evo 8.9 or a Skyline or something where it goes into a thin spot in the dash and you can't be accessing it from two angles. You know, it just needs to go in and everything happens from the back side. They're absolutely sick for that. The fact that they have onboard Lambda, also super sick. I don't have to worry about mounting one more thing and, you know, adding provisions. It's just you get the S2 and it goes in. The ultimate price, if you look at them, yes, the S2 is more expensive than the Elite 1500, but you don't have to buy the CAN Lambda. So it actually ends up being cheaper. It's a no-brainer, they're sick. You also get one more AVI, analog voltage input. This has 10, and I believe this has 11. The other thing is too, is you have dual drive-by-wire control on the S2 versus single drive-by-wire control on the Elite 1500. Why that's important is those are actually what's called half-bridge outputs. So you can run 5 amps continuous, or excuse me, 1 amp continuous, 5 amps output that would normally run like a drive-by-wire motor. So that could also run a bypass valve for anti-lag, fresh air anti-lag on your intercooler, or it could run any number of things that are high demand in terms of amperage and voltage. It has onboard dual knock. It also has onboard traction control methodology and torque management, which is pretty cool. So for the money, you just get a better ECU that seems to fit better, and we're going to start moving toward these on pretty much everything. Now, unfortunately, we've built and designed a lot of mounting plates for S2000s and Evo 10s and all this other stuff that utilize the Elite 1500 platform. So that'll change a little bit, but ultimately, like, you know, it's been 10 years. We've gotten our development's worth out of this ECU, and these things are sick. So this is the first car that is getting an S2 here, and they just, like I said, they just came out. So. Super sick. So for this K24, it's an absolutely stock K24 RBB2 or RBB3 actually. So it's late model like 06 to 08 TSX style. We switched it to a brand new RBC intake manifold. I think we talked about this before in the shop update video, but basically this is a intake manifold off a 06 to 2011 Civic Si. And the nice part about that, it bolts on. Still staying drive-by-wire. This is an RRC throttle body, so off of a FD2 Civic Type R in Japan, 06 to 2011 body style, but as a Type R, 2 millimeters larger. Basically, this is the equivalent of, I don't think it's quite the RDX, but it's sort of like a J series equivalent, but it bolts on to the RBC. It's convenient. I ran that on my 2-liter. So as a 2-liter, this car made like 227 wheel horsepower and like 160 foot-pounds of torque, maybe 158. Typically, these motors make roughly the same amount of horsepower, between 218 and 224 on our dyno in stock form, but they'll make about 180 to 185 foot-pounds of torque. So it's going to be fantastic for keeping the revs low. Now, when you have an endurance car that's running for 9 to 14 hours, you end up putting a lot of duty cycle on the rod bolts, on the rods, the big ends of the rods and things like that, meaning the crankshaft side, and duty cycle ends in fatigue and fatigue ends in failure. So usually we cut the RPM down on these. There's a million people who will say, oh, just put a RBC oil pump in it and blah, 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 which we have only because we needed to clear the baffling. I do not like to run RBC oil pumps. I do not like to run PRB oil pumps from like an RSX Type S unless I absolutely have to. It makes the motor vibrate like crazy. They're terrible. It's just been this common misconception for 20 years now that you have to have an RSX Type S oil pump to rev it and this and that. With stock cams, don't rev these things past 8,000. It doesn't make any power. It doesn't matter. Rev them to 8, downshafted pump in a front wheel drive with an OEM pan, and they're smooth as butter on these mounts. And the hard part about CRZs is you cannot use a factory mount. You have to use a Hasport mount, which goes to a solid, solid urethane, and then they vibrate like crazy. So in this case, we're using a Unit 2 baffled oil pan. Because of the baffles, we do have to switch to a PRB pump, unfortunately, so there's going to be some extra NVH and vibration, but it is what it is. You sacrifice comfort for not starving for oil in this case, not because the pump is better, but just because they don't make a baffled pan for the balance shafted pump. So here you go. But stop saying that you need one. It's ridiculous. Unless you're trying to make 9,000 RPM drag car or whatever. This ain't that. This is long run times, lots of heat, lots of duty cycle. We're gonna cut the RPM down, and the main focus is low RPM torque so that the car is still viable and competitive, but we don't have to be getting into building the motor and doing rods and pistons and upgraded rod bolts and all this other thing. It's a replacement cost analysis sort of equation where if this motor blows up, then I can just get another motor very quickly. The car is back on track and running, very quickly for not extreme cost. So that's the goal here. Trans is a 0506 RSX Type S with a 476 final drive. It's just a good combination. This car is going to run 17-inch wheels. So it's a good combination of gearing versus wheel size. And we'll run like a 225 square for now, but it'll be a 245 front, 225 rear, backward stagger. As far as the wiring and things like that, Evan has converted us all over to Deutsch DTM. It's just a lot easier than trying to modify and stick within the factory Sumitomo style connectors. Now we can just easily break out into what we need. This is, standard motorsport grade stuff. We always do that. Other than that, this mount plate and everything Evan designed and made. This will also hold the transmission cooler pump. So you'll see here this line going into the transmission. This is going to be the pump circuit for the transmission cooler. These transmissions are notorious for having fourth gear failures, and it doesn't matter how much power you have, especially when you start endurance racing them, building a lot of heat. If these transmissions go over between 230 and 240 degrees, they really start having a problem. Most transmission fluids don't like to be, manual transmission fluids don't like to be hotter than that anyway, so the thing will start missing gears. You beat up on the dog teeth and the dog rings. They become hard to shift. Secondarily to that, fourth gear gets starved for oil because they're up high in the shaft. They're like right about here. It's like fourth, fifth, and sixth, and it's not necessarily directly in the oil bath. So you really need to make sure that the fluid in there is cool, or you'll absolutely shred the teeth off of fourth gear. Ask me how I know. We used to time fourth gears out every 25 hours. So like one race weekend, and we'd be doing a fresh OEM, Honda fourth gear. So with the cooler circuit, you get anywhere between 75 and 125 hours of runtime, race time on those gears, which it's like basically 5 weekends, it could be a whole season. So typically we'll go a whole season on a 4th gear now that we have the cooler circuit. So that'll be a Tilton pump that mounts here. It is rubber isolated, so it's not buzz bombing away. That's going to pull fluid out of the bottom, pull it through a pre-filter just in case the gearbox does blow up. We don't get particulate and material into the pump. So we'll have a 200 micron pre-filter that goes into the pump, which pumps it out to a cooler and then back into the trans. So we have a cooler mounted in the front. Speaking of cooling, let's start talking about the cooling pack. So this Bad Larry right here is our cooling package. This is a custom unit that Evan designed and we fabricated here in-house. Basically, this is a self-contained unit. It contains the radiator, an oil cooler, and a transmission cooler. Now we don't have to worry about power steering coolers so much because we have an electric steering rack, so we don't need to worry about that fluid system, which is nice. The more fluid systems you can remove, the better. Less leaks, less places that are prone to leak. So this is our transmission cooler. Like I said before, the fluid will come out of the pump through the cooler and then return back through this hole here in the side. That'll be plumbed back into the transmission. Engine oil cooler, the same as well. We have prioritized fresh air coming into the duct box that will go through the oil cooler. That's plumbed off. That has disconnects in the engine bay, and then that will go over the motor. I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, it's been a minute, so now I'm going to show you where those oil lines come down through. As you can see here, there's a oil sandwich plate with swiveling radium fittings, and that's how I'm exchanging engine oil for the cooler. There will be some disconnects like right here, so that if you need to service the cooling package, you can disconnect right here, and the entire cooling package comes off of the front of the car together. So that all sits in place as Sean's showing you right now. Wow, look at that. That's fantastic. So back to the duct work. Now on the radiator side, this is the typical radiator that we use. This is a dual flow, double pass radiator from Ishimoto. A couple of interesting things that we do. Now, in a race car format, we do not do a full shroud. And the reason for that is we have a lot of fresh, clean air coming in here at high velocity. We cannot replicate that level of velocity, okay? I don't care what fan you got, you're not mimicking much over 25, 30 miles an hour of driving into static air. We just can't move that much CFM. So in this case, we have a fan with a mount plate. It's not shrouded. The reason being is in the pits, in the paddock, when you're cruising around before you get onto the racetrack, this is more than enough surface area to get the job done, to keep the car cool, but it doesn't become a restriction later on when we want to activate this entire core with driving through, ambient air. So number one, this is our race car cooling package. Again, we just need it to operate in the pits. We're not drifting, we're not going sideways, we're going forward ways. And that's where all the clean air is. So we don't necessarily care about shrouding and boxes or whatever. They just become a restriction later on. So it's really a case-by-case basis as to whether you need a shroud or not. The other thing that we do is we typically weld a fitting onto the bottom of them here so that we can send a line with a valve or some sort of an AN cap as a remote drain. I can't tell you how annoying it is when you go to drain this thing out and it goes and then it makes a mess everywhere. So what we do is we do a remote drain so that you can actually drain it into a dedicated area, into a bottle perhaps, because it comes out as a -6. It's extremely convenient. Do it. It's like 40 bucks. Just do it. Sick. Trust me. Otherwise, these are 1.25" inlets and outlets. We just use hose. I find that AN is so incredibly rigid unless you're running it over long distances. Yes, you can do like a BMRS style, Brown & Miller crimp style -16 or -20. They're much more flexible, but we're talking about like $500 worth of radiator hoses there instead of simple hose and tube joiners in order to get that job done. It's a very easy way to do it, very cost effective, and then it's easy to service if you're out, you know, in the field or at the track and you don't necessarily have spares. You can go anywhere and buy some radiator hoses that are 1.25 inches and chop the bends and everything you need out of them, and then all of your straight runs are done with hard pipes. There's a high likelihood that your hard pipes didn't blow out, but maybe a hose did. So it's a great way to approach that problem, because you don't have to worry like, oh, I'm in Boise, Idaho, and I can't find the thing that I need. Sorry, Boise, if there's anyone here from Boise. I like you guys. But ultimately, you could be anywhere and they don't have the things that you need. So you gotta think about your approach when you're solving problems like that. We'll go ahead and place this on. So that's how she goes in there like that, and all the sucking goes in through the front. So we're gonna catch all the air on the track. Nobody will have any air left for themselves. It'll all be going to us, and then they'll all overheat, and then we'll win. Enough of that. Evan killed it as usual. He always kills it. Right, Ev? I tried. That's my guy. Transmission pump. This little big boy. So then this sucker goes in like this, and this sucker be vibing away, but you won't even feel it in the frame rail. This is the power, obviously terminated to Deutsch. Look at that right there. Get the Vanna White hands on there. Nice. Okay. All right, let's move into the interior. Quick stop at the brakes. These are just a replacement rotor for RSX Type S with EP3 Type R calipers. Really simple bolt-on upgrade. Uses OEM parts. Fits to the CRZ knuckle very well, works very well. And then attached to that are a set of digressive, or no, what are these? Which generation are these? So I had made some custom development stuff. Me and BC worked together. We actually made a double digressive, local remote, double adjustable, which they don't offer. They're ER series. So this is an ER series, local remote. This is a linear valved double adjustable. So I have low speed compression and low speed rebound are independently adjustable through 2 knobs. These are custom valved ERs, linear valving, custom spring rates, custom lengths, custom mounting provisions for offset and this and that. This was a development set that I originally did with the Fit for season 1. Then we ended up going the custom double digressive setup, which is on the K24 Fit race car, endurance race car, insert picture for relevance. But, so these are the linear valved ERs. And then we got some fresh oil control arms and stuff like that on there, service parts. Interior, here we are. Not much to it. We got the factory dash. Obviously, let's start with the fact that it's caged. So Victor at Texera Fab actually did this cage for us. I've been outsourcing all of my cages to Victor lately. He does such a fantastic job. Really no qualms. You know, we conferenced on sort of how we wanted it. I gave him some dimensional constraints, said, hey, put this here, hit this, blah, blah, blah. And he nailed it, you know. 3-dimensional landing areas and landing boxes look fantastic. The main hoop is set up big for tall boys, so you can actually, these cars fit big boys pretty good. For reference, I'm 6'4", and I'm comfortable in this. I could do 3 hours in this car. You know, got to get the Honda Boy shifts in there. OEM CRZ shifter box. These are our adapter cables that I had planned on selling to people, but then I just never did. So it allows you to use, so I have different versions. I have K-swap to CRZ, I have K-swap to Fit, and basically these custom cables allow you to use your factory shifter box with a K-series transmission. Now, what transmission you use is very specific. You have to use a very specific gear selector on the transmission side, but ultimately it's nice. It's you know, the factory shifts. factory shifts, and it's comfortable. It's in a good position. And yeah, that's good. I like it. This was a factory, I don't know if you can see this. So Works Bell hub on a Momo steering wheel with a checkered sports insert, just so that we're not looking like dorks out there. This was a factory navigation car. So where the navigation unit used to be, we're gonna do a carbon block off plate, and then there will be a 7-inch rear view camera screen mounted. So instead of having a rear view mirror, we're gonna have a rear view camera. So it'll be full time on so that we can see cars coming up and this and that. Clears up the windshield to a certain degree, and it's just a nice, cool way to use that insert thing there. Haltech IC7 dash, dare I? No, I won't. But IC7 dash, with the new Haltech firmware, you can repurpose these buttons so that we can use them as like a miniature CAN button keypad. What that means is instead of wiring these buttons directly to the thing we want to control, the act of pushing this button goes into a central network that says, hey, this button got pushed, what do we want to do with that button? And it could be a number of things like fuel pump out, fan override, you know, whatever. Fuel pump out being like, oh, I got to drain my fuel tank because I'm storing it for the winter or whatever. You just turn the key on, hook your quick disconnect to the fuel line, and just click, and it turns on and pumps your fuel out. You don't have to have any toggle switches. You don't have to add any auxiliary wiring. Those functions already exist in the ECU. We just want to be able to take control of them. Otherwise, the Haltech IC7 is fantastic as a heads-up display style dash. You get all the ECU information that you want, and then what we usually do on the side for telemetry, lap data, you know, lateral G, speed, lap times, etc., is we'll run an AIM Solo 2 DL. Now the DL means that it can pull the CAN stream in and overlay that over your normal data trace. So we'll have our engine RPM, temps, whatever is on the CAN network can be accessed by the AIM, overlaid into the telemetry, and then when you're breaking down your lap information, you can add that stuff as well. So those channels will all be available. We don't need to run any redundant sensors. There's no, you know, back in the day, you used to have to run double sensors. Well, I got a sensor for my ECU, and then I got a temp sensor for my gauge cluster. You know, it's just, now you got 400 sensors to do 200 jobs. It like doesn't make any sense. So by being able to use the CAN stream, what I see, the AIM telemetry will see, and it's just better, okay? Window nets. One window net, the inside triangle net will go to here. The other triangle net will go to here. With this quick disconnect, that the people that are trying to save our lives can come in and go, hey, get out, and smack it, and that will allow the net to fall down. I don't think that that's installed right now, but at some point it will be, and I'll show you. The other way is you can pull it like this, and the net comes down, and you dive out. Swarm. But yeah, so that's it for the interior. So it's kind of crazy. This is the factory floor setup in the back of a CRZ. Now normally they have like a big battery pack, call it an IMA, I call it an LAME, in the back of the trunk. And so it's so super deep, which is cool because then the factory sheet metal acts as like a diffuser. These cars are very, very aerodynamic, which is cool. But again, I'm 6'4", and granted we've taken the glass out of here or whatever, but like I can almost stand in the back of this thing. Pretty nuts. So we're gonna use this space as the area for a 21-gallon radium fuel cell, which I won't go into the details right now. We'll cover that in a later video, but ultimately, big old fuel cell in here. The factory fuel tank is removed, which is puny, I guess, to say the least. It's like 11 gallons technically, but you can only use like 9.5, and then you'll starve a little bit, like on track, not on the road. We call that 9.5 usable, or 9.5 to the burp. So you'll be cornering, and it'll burp. You know, you get a little burp because you starve for fuel. And that means you have less than 1 lap to make it into pit lane, or they're gonna have to send a tow truck for you. And then you lose the race. And everyone gets mad at you. Moving on. Special note about this exhaust, I searched high and low for this exhaust. It's a very, very rare little ditty. So in 2013, the CRZ came as an HPD or an optional HPD package that had a Rotrex supercharger on it and this center exit exhaust. This is a factory HPD part. You can buy it from the dealer, or you could buy it from the dealer, and it came with the exhaust and the diffuser for the rear bumper. Super cool center exit, and it's actually slightly larger diameter because of the supercharger, so it works very, very well with the K-Series. So it's a little OEM goodness sprinkled on there. Very OEM bougie. Or what are they, what's everyone saying right now? It's very demure. This is the diffuser I was talking about. So it's an add-on, it sort of goes over the original rear bumper deal, which would normally be smooth here. It's just super cool. The fact that this is an OEM part that you could get from Honda as a kit, now it wasn't cheap, don't get me wrong, but it's a very cool OEM, good fitting, good sounding exhaust and very cool looking diffuser setup. Or I guess rear overlay with center exits. I don't know if I would call it a diffuser, although it does connect to the bottom of the body. I don't know, you know, whatever. I'm not a snob. And then right here, this is our CarTech rain light. So the rules, usually the rule books state that if the race turns into a rain race, you have to have a rain light. Now a rain light is just extremely bright. So when you're racing and you're doing, you know, 80 to 100 to 120 miles an hour and you're in a pack of 10 or 12 cars and you're 6 to 8 feet away from each other, you can't see anything. I mean, you can't see shit. So the only guiding light is the fact that you have this super bright red rain light that you can use to determine sort of your proximity to other people. Now you hope that the people in the front of that splash pack are actually braking appropriately for the upcoming corner, because you're putting total faith in the fact that you can see their rain light, you can judge proximity, you can judge when their brake lights come on, and everybody in the pack has enough time to brake, slow down, and get through the corner or series of corners. Dude, rain races are no joke. Like, they're no joke. So, yeah, it's crazy. I love racing in the rain. Some of my best races happened in the rain. It really is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter if you've got a bunch of horsepower, or, you know, whatever. I mean, I've passed Porsche Cup cars at Watkins Glen in the rain on the outside of the carousel turn. Now, anybody who knows what that is or wants to look up what that is, like, that's ridiculous. I'm in a Honda Fit and I'm passing Porsches on the outside in the wet, you know, just nutso. But rain race is very cool. You just got to be able to see. So we have that, the rain light. Get one. As usual, Robbie at Track Tough. We reached out to Track Tough to get a swirl pot for this car. These are really nice, and he makes them custom, and they're fantastic, and the fit and finish is fantastic, and it makes it a very convenient place to fill and bleed from. Track Tough, Robbie, we love you. Thanks, buddy. So that's sort of the current status of the CRZ. We will do some follow-up videos and stuff like that. I want to talk about the fuel cell and some other goodies that are going on in the back of the car as you see this thing come together, which it should come together relatively quickly. And we'll get it on the dyno and we'll do some testing. All right, Danny, what do we got going on here?
We got a Porsche 997 Turbo.
Porsche? Porsche?
So we're taking the front suspension apart, putting some shorter springs so we can match some lower ride height skis. The front was too long to the rear. We're gonna do some testing of droop.
Droop testing.
See what the situation is with the bump steer and such, how low we're gonna go, because it might just be a total nightmare to drive afterwards. So we're gonna kind of see what the best of both worlds are and go with that setup, kind of.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So as far as I know, this car is, so this is George's car. George's a fantastic guy, lives in New York City, and we're working on a couple of projects for George, and we'll roll those out as things happen. George and family. So they're a big car family doing a lot of cool car things, and we'll talk about their stuff in a later video. But this is George's 997 Turbo. It's a manual car. I don't really know what else to say about it. It's a manual 997 Turbo. They're dope. 997, probably my favorite Porsche body ever. But yeah, shortening up the springs, and he's got a custom wheel set on this car and some trunk things going on. He's got a different trunk. I don't know who makes this. Wesson Pfizer? Wesson Sicer. So we're doing suspension things. These cars bump steer really, really bad. Basically every Porsche bump steers really, really bad, and nobody can quite figure out how to fix it, although there's 20 billion bump steer kits on the market that are all wrong. Thanks, guys. So we actually go through and repair these things so that they actually drive nice. And that's what we're doing. So anyway, we're gonna go down to the lair. I have something to show you. It's just a quick update on one of my project cars. Let's go. The lair. Okay, so we have a bunch of stuff in the lair. I don't know if we've ever officially talked about it. We call this the lair. This is our vehicle storage side of the shop. So we come down into the tunnel and underground into the lair. Sort of like Batman's cave, but a little bit cooler. So come on in. Oh, did we talk about that real quick? So I might have another wagon project on the way. Come on. All right, so this is my sad and unfortunate E90 M3 sedan manual. It's a 2008 carbon black E90 M3 V8 car. I've had this car for a number of years. I actually have 4 of these cars, or used to have 4 of these cars for another business venture, whatever. But recently this car unfortunately met its demise by going through a construction zone and hitting a humongous boulder and blowing the oil pan to smithereens. So things are still in the works or whatever, but ultimately this may end up being a parts car for an E91 wagon M3 touring build. Stay tuned for that. That's gonna be expensive. Let's go. Okay. So here it is. The wagon is back from Engine Bay Paint. I went with yellow. I've been wanting to go with yellow. Yeah, so I haven't done an update on this car in a while. The last time was getting it ready for Peter to come and pick up and paint. Peter took the car, had it for a little while, did a fantastic job cleaning it up, getting rid of some of the rust and all that stuff. I think I remember showing you guys back here in the previous video, this was all disgusting because it had had a front clip done on this front pocket. Clean Carfax though. But anyway, so that was done. So Peter got the radiator support straightened up, got everything cleaned up. Anything that was rusty or disgusting got cleaned, taken down to bare metal, ground smooth, cleaned up absolutely perfect. And then we ended up going with C5 Z06 Millennium Yellow. Now the reason that I like this color is versus the original Solar Yellow is, and I talked about this in the previous video as well, was it's just too light. It's too pastel-y, it looks faded right out of the gun. I don't like that. Versus this, I call this mac and cheese or Velveeta shells and cheese yellow. I absolutely love these deeper yellows. So that's why we ended up going this way. Now I don't think that I can afford to paint the outside of the car right now. I did buy another IS300 Sport Cross for some of the body panels as a parts car and sort of thing. To get this car back together, it will be silver on the outside for now, but at this point, I'm basically ready to start cleaning up and cataloging the things that I have that I took off the car, that I want to clean up, put back in the car, or modify or whatever, like the wiring harness. A lot of things need to go in prior to the motor going in just because of its location. Like factory, the wire harness runs up and behind the engine. I'm also doing a Chase Bays ABS delete, so I'm going to run my lines, my ABS lines up that way as well. So a lot of that stuff will happen on the firewall side prior to the motor going in. So I got to finish building the motor, I did a solid bucket conversion. I need to get those DLC coded. This was before Kelford had their pre-DLC coded buckets. And I'm the chump. I'm the last chump who did it the OEM way and then send them out to be DLC coded and end up spending more than if you just bought them from Kelford. Just buy them from Kelford. They kill it. The price is amazing. Just do it that way if you're gonna do it. So yeah, finished putting that together. I got my CD09, I gotta get in this thing. So we got a bunch of things that we need to do on this car, or unfortunately, this is gonna be all me without help because I can't afford my own shop. So I'll be going through and getting this thing together pretty soon. But I just wanted to show off the engine bay paint, and we'll do some detail shots here. Raptor line and the fender liners as well. All right, so I'm gonna end it there. This is what we have going on. CRZ, Porsche, my IS300. We got a ton of other stuff. I gotta get to Jimmy Skyline and that sort of thing here coming up shortly. But yeah, thanks everybody for subscribing to the channel. That was huge. So we're not at 50K yet. The 20K that have subscribed, that's huge. All you gotta do is tell one friend. Just do it, get it done. Jimmy gets a free RX-7 build. All right. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. I hope to have more regular updates here. We're trying to get to like a one video a week type thing. Yeah, that's it. Bye-bye.